People no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements. What can you now disclose? Funny story. Moments after I was unceremoniously fired because my tech skills were found to be insufficient, the bosses who fired me demanded to know the whereabouts of a hugely important computer file I had worked on. I refused to help them, monsieur. I even cited the exact language of the NDA I was compelled to sign. I am prohibited from disclosing details of my employment with anyone, including past and current employees of the company, I expounded, adding, and ask someone who works here, because I don't. It was a great fuck you moment that I still cherish 5 years later. But now I think I can disclose the truth. I only hid behind the NDA language because I had no clue where to find their damn computer file, or even where to look. I suck with computers. Greater than fired because my tech skills were found to be insufficient. Greater than I suck with computers. This checks out. The cupcake shop I used to work for claimed everything was homemade, but used Pillsbury cake mix as a base. I read a thread, I think it was a confessions thread on AskReddit, where a woman who ran a super successful home bakery business was literally just using Pillsbury cake mix. And this is how I learned what Pillsbury was, as we don't have it in England. She had the odd hack or two and was seriously good at decorating apparently, but she was essentially just using cake mix. She even talked about how she felt like a fraud, got nauseous about going to the grocery store, and hated the sight or taste of cake. I remember this. She would log in once every few years and give updates. Last I read, she stopped doing cakes because it became too much for her. My mom does cakes as a side gig, and while she makes her own frosting from scratch, she uses boxed cake mix that she, too, passes off as her own. Probably way more common than anyone lets on. My graphic designer best friend won my town's Design the Centennial logo contest. Despite having never set foot in the town, I worked for the radio station, and just did an interview with one of the organizers, where he lamented that there weren't very many entries. So I called my friend and said, "Want in on this?" He said, "Sure," as he lived on the other side of the country at the time. I spent the next day texting him photos of the town for inspiration. Anyway, when he won and they found out he was a professional graphic designer who lived on the other side of the country, they made him and me sign NDAs because the town was afraid people would think they brought in a ringer. Edit. Well, this kinda blew up. So let me answer some of the more common questions being brought up. 1. What's a ringer? A ringer is a professional who's brought into a contest in order to guarantee favored results. 2. Why did I have to sign the NDA? Well, they unveiled the logo at a great big ceremony where they presented the prize money. I think it was a couple $100. And since my friend lived on the other side of the country, he asked if I could accept on his behalf. I wound up not going, because we were broadcasting from another event that day. So the mayor accepted on his behalf. 3. Where is this? Canada, a small town in Alberta. That's all I'm comfortable sharing. How do they make you? They threatened to withhold the prize and you threatened to tell the public, which would be way worse PR-wise than what they alone wanted the NDA for. Presumably if they didn't sign the NDA, they wouldn't have picked the design. I was a contractor for NASA. I still fully support the agency, but I was extremely bugged when I learned that each separate NASA center, e.g., JPL, Kennedy, Ames, Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers, so that when HQ is ready to assign a big mission, and a lot of dollars, to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. Ames can't do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. Quote, the downside is that there is a ton of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for NASA. Share knowledge. Collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers. That's not at all different from how the big national labs used to work. The rivalry between Lawrence Livermore and Los Alamos is almost legendary. Supposedly they got better about sharing, but it wouldn't shock me if they were still up to the same hijinks. As a lawyer, I've viewed a lot of these in tort settlements. The most common use of the NDA is to keep the award amount quiet so everyone won't sue the company, hoping to get that sweet settlement money. Edit. Several people have PM'd me about their NDAs, and if they can talk about this or that. I am not your lawyer. I don't give legal advice to non-clients. You shouldn't take legal advice from strangers on Reddit. But it's called a settlement because you settled the matter. Let it go. You got the hush money. Now do the hush. SMH. As a lawyer who represents plaintiffs that sign these settlements, I say over and over, do not go post this on Facebook. Don't tell your friends. Just say that it's resolved and you were happy with the outcome. Inevitably a week later, I'll get an email from defense counsel with my client's Facebook link on some group. We did it, guys. Just got $XXXXXX. Person facepalming. Edit. Lol, wow. Biggest karma post of my life. To answer the question, then what? In the general answer, it entirely depends on the settlement agreement. Maybe in the corporate world a settlement has to be returned and the release of claims stands. There's a lot examples of losing a settlement agreement. But for our agreements, it would just nullify the agreement and put everyone back to square one, which would then likely settle again. So I just have to reach out my client, chew them out to remove everything, and then send a follow-up to defense counsel assuring them that it's not going to happen again. I like that. Your friends and family will all start asking you for money. People will bring up old debts you owe them that you won't remember if they're real or not. Just keep it to yourself or you're going to hate it. This seems to work better than the threat of legal consequences for breaking an NDA. I used to do data analysis of revenue management for some big companies. Many companies have no clue about their data or their revenue streams. I'm talking several $1 million of revenue disappearing in the pipeline and no one knowing what happened with it, or even caring really. There were multiple times I had to inform clients that we had huge gaps in their costs and we needed to find the missing numbers somewhere in order to make our final reports correct, and was met with the paraphrased reply, just sprinkle the missing costs over the existing one. We just want the final total to be correct. All the companies cared about if the amount of money they have at the end of the year is higher than at the beginning, and anything that happens in between is inconsequential. I objected at first to my bosses, saying that what we were doing was incorrect, but they said to just do as the client said. In the end, I got disillusioned, and whenever our clients came with requests that made no mathematical or logical sense, I'd just execute as requested and let their analysts figure out later that the analysis they paid six figures for was basically nonsense. I didn't care, because I had documentation of all their requests and my objections, which were thoroughly ignored. I had a few cases where clients came back disgruntled several months down the line after some in-house analyst had done a deep dive of their data and came up with objections that I had pointed out months before. I'd usually dig up the relevant emails and clear my name. My choice of action was to tell them to pound sand. But my bosses always bent over backwards for clients, so we'd have to do the cleanup I anticipated. In the end, I learned most of our economy is held together by duct tape and wishful thinking. At most 10% of people working at big companies are competent and carry the bulk of the work in. Rarely are the competent ones the ones in charge. Edit. I want to clarify something for everyone who's talking about embezzlement and people lining their pockets. I can assure you that in the data I was working on, this was very unlikely. The money streams I was analyzing went to other companies as costs. So if they had literally disappeared, someone would notice. This missing money was really just a case of utter incompetence. People just too lazy or stupid to properly keep track of what goes where. I'm sure that if we got all the data from partnering companies, we would eventually be able to track everything precisely. We were unfortunately limited to whatever data our clients provided, and we would rarely get data from other companies as they're quite privy about sharing it with third parties. This rant was not about corruption but rather incompetence. You know, NDAs are only good if you have the money to sue. Worked with a company that didn't pay me, so I told them their NDA didn't apply. They threatened to sue. My response: you can't even afford to pay me. You sure as hell can't afford to sue. They also don't extend to keeping you from reporting illegal activity to the justice system, monsieur. Some places may try to make people believe that and may even try to imply it in the NDA. But it has no legal standing. When I was fired from Auntie Anne's in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete NDA contract, promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store because the secret I was keeping was making pretzels literally requires two products. One of them being water and the other a large bag of pretzel meal, dust powder. Quite literally anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Edit. I signed the letter when I was hired, but I got a copy with my termination letter. Well, you forgot to say what the secret browning agent is that all the pretzels get dipped into before they go on the sheet and into the oven. It's baking soda and water. Mystery solved. Also lemonade too. 4. 8. Refrigerate. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.